None motion carries. Now I'm going to move to item number 25 on the regular agenda. Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board, this is a technical procedural requirement of the board to actually establish a roadway where we relocate and build a roadway in an unincorporated area that also goes through a portion of the city of Tucson. This is related to the Hughes access roadway that is being relocated and renamed the Aerospace Parkway. It is a project that we have been working on for some period of time, since really late 2006. It is now proceeding to the stage of where implementation. We hope construction will occur sometime during 2014. The current process is that final design is approaching to be complete, and we're completing the environmental assessment that's required because a portion of the property, a portion of the project actually goes through property owned by the Tucson Airport Authority that was acquired from a grant from the Federal Aviation Administration. Therefore, we're in this process with the Federal Aviation Administration regarding the environmental assessment. Once that's complete, we will then acquire property from the Tucson Airport Authority. They have written a letter in support of the establishment. And then once the property is acquired, we then can proceed to construction. Total project cost is about $12.7 million. That includes right-of-way acquisition, design, environmental assessments, all the things that are necessary for it. But is in fact probably, in my view, one of the most important economic development transportation improvement projects in the region today, because it relocates a roadway that today encroaches on Raytheon's operations and prevents their expansion. They're operating today in their facilities under waivers from the United States Air Force, and those waivers are not assured. And the only way to protect them in the long term is to move the roadway and to allow the buffer area to serve as the buffers to their existing operations. The distance the road is being relocated, a half mile to the south, actually allows Raytheon, should they choose in the future, to potentially expand. So it's the establishment is the first step. It is a legal requirement required by a court of appeals case that says the county can spend money inside the city or town, but first, before they do so, they must establish a roadway. This is the establishment proceedings.
Thank you. We have a number of speakers. I'm going to start calling the speakers. Steve Egan.
Thank you very much. My name is Steve Egan, and my affiliation is with TRIO. Just a couple of,
with Raytheon.
and also previously on the senior leadership team of Raytheon Missile Systems. Thank you.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Madam Chair, are you speaking on behalf of Raytheon?
I'm
today?
speaking as a private citizen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make these comments. Mr. Huckleberry really gave a good synopsis, but what I would like to just give a few things that I think need to be taken into consideration because they're very important. I think the first thing is, if you think about financial challenges, and I know we all have a number of financial challenges, particularly in the near term. But when it comes to financial challenges from an economic development standpoint, job preservation is very important. I think that giving this roadway the opportunity to be made provides job preservation to our most significant private employer here in southern Arizona, and that is Raytheon Missile Systems. The buffer zone is very important. I think we all have read and have heard about some of the constraints that is put on Raytheon Missile Systems. Those are very real, and I think this roadway certainly provides an opportunity to mitigate that. Number two, I think we also need to think in the long term, and in the long term it's really about economic development. I think as we talk about aerospace and defense corridor, this particular roadway provides the fundamental structure to enable that aerospace and defense aerospace and defense development to actually take place. So I urge you to consider this very seriously and to support it. And I thank you very much for having the opportunity to address the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Carroll.
Sir,
Yes.
please, I just have one question.
Yes.
When it comes to compliance currently, what you're hoping that we can do is assure that we have a distance-specific requirement for which operations? All operations that you may have under the umbrella of Raytheon? This is a question that pertains to the type of expansion that we may be able to see.
Yes. This is
The criteria from the Defense Department is how, sir?
This is the buffer. This is creating a buffer for the final assembly and checkout operation that runs to the south of Raytheon.
Well, thank you. And currently, you believe that this move of the road is going to be able to protect us for future engagement as far as job expansion here in Keene.
I personally believe that very sincerely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Harold Ashton, and I neglected to mention, speakers are limited to 3 minutes. You'll note your time, the little yellow, red, and green buttons will tell you where you are in the presentation, how much time you have left. Mr. Ashton, welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. I am here both as a member of DM50 support group for Davis-Monthan, which I think is critical, and as we make that connection with Raytheon and the military component that we so value in our community. I'm also the chairman of the board of directors of Ashton Company, and we have been building highways for Pima County for at least the last 50 years. We would hope we might have an opportunity at this job, but the reason that I'm here is in support of Raytheon and Davis-Monthan. Those two employers amount to tens of thousands of jobs in this community, which are critical to the continuing success of Tucson, Arizona. And I'm very concerned when we saw Raytheon build a big plant in Alabama. I think that there are 4 missile divisions. 3 of them were in Tucson. 1 of them was in Alabama. The last time they had a major meeting, the major meeting was held in Alabama. Those messages I hear very clearly. And looking on the internet last night, I see there's another $75 million project being constructed by Raytheon in Alabama. I encourage this board to do whatever we can to keep these jobs and these major industries in our community of Tucson, Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Sarah Smallhouse.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm speaking on my behalf as a citizen. I'm a member of the board of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, and strongly encourage you to approve this. As we look forward into our future, connectivity in the south part of Tucson area and the airport, Raytheon, the technology part, as we develop our transportation logistics and infrastructure, I think this represents a huge opportunity to strengthen our economy and make this an attractive place for employers who are here, and employers who we want to grow, and employers we want to attract. And this is a key component of the whole infrastructure that's envisioned. I think it's very strategic, and any kind of transportation infrastructure is expensive, but in the overall picture, I think it would be far more expensive to not do this. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom McGovern.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Tom McGovern. I'm representing the Tucson Metro Chamber today, and I'm also chair of the Infrastructure Committee for Southern Arizona Leadership Council. I just encourage, as other speakers have, the board to move forward on this establishment project. You've heard about the benefits, certainly, to Raytheon. We haven't mentioned really the Tucson Airport preservation opportunity here. A second runway for Tucson Airport is really critical, and this provides another opportunity for us to preserve that option for the hopefully near future. Additionally, it provides protection for the 162nd Fighter Wing, which I think we all agree is an important element of our community and of our economy. As a connector, this is also an important route, connecting areas like the Port of Tucson and other burgeoning aerospace defense employers and those who would come to the community to locate themselves. If I could just give you a quick story, the FEMA Association of Governments has just recently stood up a new committee, their Economic Development Committee, and I was asked to be the vice chair of that committee, and as we were preparing for the first meeting, trying to establish what the real role of that committee would be, it occurred to me that we're now talking in this community about things, I think, in the right way. Infrastructure is certainly intricately connected to economic development, and I think we all recognize that. But going further and prioritizing the work that we do in the community on the basis of the business case for that improvement is something I think we should continue to do and do even more rigorously in the future. So we welcome this relatively small but important planning tool, and we want to recognize the long-term and short-term economic development implications of it and urge the board to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Mike Grassinger.
Good morning. I am Mike Grassinger. I'm speaking today in my capacity as president of the DM50 and also as a member of the newly formed Southern Arizona Defense Alliance. And there's not much I can say that hasn't already been said by the people. That is our position as well. We are very much in support of this relocation, and I've got a letter here that I'll submit to the record. And since I've been in the audience many times at these meetings, I know how agonizing it can be for the people who are sitting through this. So I'll just summarize it by saying I agree with what was said before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grassinger.
Mike.
Judy Patrick.
Mike,
Oh, Supervisor Lees.
did you say you were from the Baja Arizona Defense Alliance?
Southern Arizona Defense Alliance.
Very good. I am a seventh generation Arizonan, so I try to be straight up. Thank you very much.
Judy Patrick. You don't wish to speak? You do not wish to speak. Thank you. Then Joe Snell.
Good morning, supervisors, Administrator Huckleberry. My name is Joe Snell, and I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of Tucson Regional Economic Opportunities, better known as TRIO locally. Thank you for the time this morning. I'll also have brevity in that a lot's been said here this morning. I would strongly urge you to approve this resolution. I think we need to, really look what's transpired in the last 6 or 7 years. with the Great Recession. And although our economy is recovering, we're seeing signs of recovery, and jobs are starting to come back, you know, a day doesn't go by that I realize that we still haven't replaced 35% of those jobs that were lost during the Great Recession. So for me, what this is about is an investment in something that will accelerate our future recovery. It's about jobs. It's about good-paying jobs. The Hughes Road is a building block to build out an aerospace and defense employment center. I think there's two things. We've already heard the retention issue and how important that will be to Raytheon Missile Systems and the other companies out of the airport region. But it also gives us an opportunity to create something special, an asset that we currently don't have, and that is an aerospace and defense business park. A lot like we see in Cummings, Alabama, where Raytheon did their most recent expansion. So it will, in short, I think, improve our competitiveness and allow us to have an asset to sell that will help us bring back some of these good-paying jobs that were lost in the Great Recession. In summary, again, we strongly recommend that you approve this resolution and build this Hughes Road extension. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
Madam
Snow.
Chair,
Supervisor.
Mr. Snow, I have a couple of questions. You're talking about building out the aerospace and defense corridor. Are you talking about the properties that Pima County purchased just right around where this Hughes access road? Is that where you're talking about
I'm
building?
talking about a Cummings-esque business park, Supervisor. I don't know, I defer to Administrator Huckleberry where that actual alignment is, but currently right now we've seen many opportunities with companies wanting to relocate to the region. And they want to be in close proximity to groups like Raytheon, and there's nowhere really to put.
Are they going to be doing this with private investment, or are we talking public investment?
I would think that the public side would be putting the infrastructure in, and then private investment.
Thank you.
We have two other individuals, David Welch and Steve Huffman. They do not wish to speak, but are in support of the resolution. With that, there are no other speakers. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Mr. Huckleberry. Mr. Huckleberry, this action today, can you tell us about the prior steps? I know we began this process in 2010. Is there any way that you can assist maybe people here that are for the first time hearing about the acquisition and then the road alignment and so on? Just a Reader's Digest version of this, sir.
Madam
Mr.
Chair
Huckleberry.
and Supervisor Carroll, yes. We really began the discussions with Raytheon back in about 2006 and 2007, and they've always desired to have Hughes Access relocated. They've also been pressured in the past by what we call incompatible urban uses on their south side of their facility, which is closest to their final assembly and checkout facilities, which requires safety buffers. We then, and this board, did purchase lands, about 500 acres plus, that was threatening to the urban encroachment, incompatible uses, with about $5.9 million of funding from the county. We then went and obtained the funding from the region with regard to the roadway relocation. Those two pieces are in place. The piece that was just referenced recently is this concept of an aerospace defense research business park, modeled after the facility in Alabama, the Cummings Research Facility. What has been identified as approximately 2,800 acres of future aerospace and defense business research park activities and employers. Typically, the model that's being used is exactly the same that occurred in Alabama, and that is the public infrastructure is the investment of the local jurisdiction. The private investment is basically what builds all of the facilities and accomplishes the economic activity within the business park. There are really only two property owners in this proposed aerospace and defense research park, the county, with our approximately now, by the time you add in the lands we already own, in the vicinity of about 600 acres, and the Tucson Airport Authority. The business park has been identified and included in the Tucson Airport Authority master plan. And therefore, the lands are set aside for a business park and research park development consistent with airport activities. So all those steps are basically in place today.
Mr. Huckleberry, and I want to state that this board had seen a couple of applications to use those properties prior to our acquisition for residential housing. Those were unanimously turned down, I recall, by the Board of Supervisors, not once, but twice. Can you tell us what that, in the history, as you recall it, what that might have done to the Raytheon facilities that are there?
The fact that residential development is incompatible was identified by Raytheon. Raytheon uses this facility for some of their radar testing facilities, or this particular geographic location. And I think Raytheon said it best, at least in one meeting I was at, said that certainly residential properties could be built beyond the safety arcs, but as we test our radar facilities and look at their functionality, the fact that individuals who would occupy those residences would have their garage doors going up and down out of, without being activated by them would cause a little bit of distress. And they felt that it's best to have that area be buffered. Not that it won't be built on. The county, when we acquired our property, have the full intention to resell that property back to the private sector for employment. But we're going to ensure that that new employment is compatible with Raytheon's operations.
So it has restrictions on it, primarily industrial use and not residential.
Yes.
Thank you. I also want to mention that during the process, many of the negotiations and discussions have been in public and have been here at the dais, but certainly over the history since 2006, as I've sat on the board, our great concern about the #1 employer in the private sector of Raytheon has been a primary and top priority for the board. Thank you, Mr. Huckleberry.
Thank you, Supervisor Carroll. Any other comments, discussion?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Miller.
I'd like to just address the fact that this letter from Raytheon that Mr. Huckleberry included in the package was from May 9th, 2006, which is 8 years ago. Since this time, Raytheon has been sued multiple times by Pima County Board of Supervisors, who subsequently removed themselves from the lawsuit in 2012 during the election year. It is now in the county assessor's hand. And also, the one thing that was always really interesting to me is that not a single representative of Raytheon has contacted me or my office. I don't believe there's any representative of Raytheon in the audience today that is here to speak. If there is, I'd love to hear from them about the fact that they need this road moved. There are multiple ingress, egress in and out of Raytheon missile systems that many people take in and out of there from day to day. This would merely move this road a half a mile south of the property that Pima County purchased from an industrial developer for $6 million, and now we're talking about doing industrial development on it. And Raytheon shows no commitment, as far as I've seen, to further expand facilities in Tucson, and as the gentleman that just spoke a few minutes ago, he said another $75 million project has moved to Alabama. Raytheon built that facility for $300 million down in Huntsville, Alabama. After the discussions, again, they did a search. I believe it took them almost 2 years before they made that decision. And the last discussions that we had that were documented was a letter that you put in the packet that showed that you had a discussion with Tucson City Manager Mike Letcher, City of South Tucson Manager Enrique Cerna, Sarita Town Manager Jim Stahl, and Oro Valley Town Manager Jerome Watson. It says you've met with a number of Raytheon executives to discuss collaboration, etc. And the interesting thing to me is there are no names of the Raytheon folks who took part in this discussion 4 years ago. And we have had no further contact. There is nothing in the packet that shows there's any contact since 4 years ago. And this facility was built in 2000, opened in, was it 2012? 2011, 2012, but it took them 2 years to make their decision. If this had been such a concern, why not back in 2006 did we not immediately jump on this and move this road? Now suddenly it's a concern since we purchased this property that if we move this road, we'll make this property be able to be developed into a tech park. This is what concerns me about this is I have, as a voting member of this board, one would think the Raytheon executives that want this road moved so badly would be here in this meeting or would have contacted my office because I'm one of the people that will be voting on this. And this tech park now, building all of the road down there, 12.8 million, is taking money out of our HERF money that should be spent on roads that have been in the queue for many, many years. I could cite two in my district, Portero Farms and Thorndale Road, which were scheduled. This is taking money away from roads that need to be repaired and building yet another road while we don't even maintain the roads we've got. And this is my concern, is if there is a Raytheon representative in this meeting, please step up. I'd love to hear from you that you need this road moved. I have never, and I've asked for this in every meeting, and I've never been contacted by Raytheon. And again, like I said, the last meeting on this was 4 years ago. And a lot has happened since, and as the gentleman just spoke, Raytheon just built a project in Cummings, Alabama. Their tech park down there was built largely with private money. Morton Thiokol put a lot of money into that tech park. It started in the 1960s. I did a lot of research on that tech park. And Raytheon invested $300 million of their own dollars. This was not a handout to Raytheon. They invested $300 million to build their facility down there. We missed the boat back in 2006 when we did not jump on this and invest the money then. And now you're saying, let's build it now when they've already moved. They've already moved on. And we'll hope that they'll come. And I do not want to invest taxpayer money on the hope that somebody will come here and build technical facilities. We don't have any guarantees. Mr. Snell from Trio got up here. We have nothing in the queue from anyone that they're going to invest money in this. Yet we're going to invest taxpayer dollars, $12.8 million, in the hopes that someone will come and build these facilities. I think it is wrong. I think it is gambling with the taxpayer dollars, and I'm not willing to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Huckleberry?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board. I think Supervisor Miller raised a number of issues that should be addressed. The first one is that no matter how the board and what the board thinks, you cannot trump the Arizona Constitution with regard to taxation, and that matter has been resolved and been settled by the courts. The second deals with who's asked for this road relocation. It's been a very common theme in all of my meetings with the Raytheon executives. In fact, the one who's 4 years ago, probably sitting in the audience, the speaker who spoke first, who's a retired executive from Raytheon. Just last Friday, I had a conference call with the Air Force, with the Tucson Airport Authority, with John Brown Eyes, who is a Raytheon executive, about this road relocation and the other activities. They still believe this is an urgent problem that needs to be resolved. The monies involved are what we call urban HERF, which is 12.6% money that comes allocated through the region. It is not money that specifically belongs to Pima County, although we are an allocator of those funds through the regional activities. Most urban HERF has always been allocated toward capacity improvements in our transportation system and not road repairs and maintenance. The materials, I think, that have been cited really come from questions raised by Supervisor Miller's office, and the question of, please list the Raytheon executives didn't come up in those series of questions. We're happy to do that. But I think this is a project that is very, very important to the region and has economic development, preservation, and economic expansion as a primary focus. Certainly, Raytheon can choose to do as they wish. They're a private corporation. But what we must do is allow them the first opportunity to consolidate operations or expand operations, to not constrain them such that they relocate from this region.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Miller.
I'd just like to respond to that Mr. Egan did identify himself as not speaking for Raytheon Corporation. He is a private citizen. And again, if there are conversations with Raytheon executives, I'd certainly like to be included in those as a voting member of this board. And again, none of them have contacted me because my vote counts. And if it was that critical, the Raytheon executives would be contacting the members of the board. And again, I do recognize this HERF money we have a listing here, and we have the projects in Pima County that are not going to be completed because of this. And that's really all I have to say about this matter. Thank you.
Supervisor Bolanez.
Madam Chair, this is in obviously District 2, which is my district, and it's something that has been in the works for a number of years. Well, while Mr. Egan was the head of the office or the facility here. The truth is, this isn't about some of the other issues. This is about making sure that our current facility, our largest private employer in Pima County, has the buffer it requires so that it does not need to rely on DOD waivers in order to stay here. This is about providing an economic development opportunity, not a handout, for other companies to be located next to our largest private employer. And as Mr. Snell mentioned, there has been a desire to do so. This is about simply what is good for the economic development future of this community and what is not. It's really that simple. It's something that sadly has taken us some time to get done. But part of that was because we needed to make sure that this is something that was beneficial to that private employer, as well as some of those primary employment opportunities that we've discussed. And now that we have established that, I'd like to move item number 25 and resolution number 2014-16.
Motion and a second to approve item 25 and resolution number 2014-16.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Elias.
Good conversation and appreciate folks from the business community coming out and having their voices heard here. We've all been hearing about this for 5 or 6 years now. This is not a new discussion, and I think to label it as something that's just come up and something that we haven't heard about before is somewhat disingenuous. So I think we need to move forward with this item and help protect good paying jobs on the south side and protect the business environment for all of us here. But to pretend that this conversation has not been taking place or that it hasn't been taking place along with the business leaders from Raytheon is like I said, at best, disingenuous.
Madam Chair, I'd like to respond to that because as you're referring to me, it is not disingenuous. This conversation started back in 2006. As I stated earlier, it would have been more appropriate to have acted upon it in 2006. We didn't. We lost the jobs to Huntsville, and we've since lost a lot more. I am going to object to this resolution. I believe the $12.7 million should be spent on existing projects that should have been done long ago. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Carroll.
I'd like to go ahead and call the question on Mr. Valadez's
Okay,
motion.
I needed the motion to be amended. We also need to close public hearing. That's okay. And the question's been called, so therefore I can't speak to this. But obviously I'm supportive. Roll call.
Supervisor Carroll.
Aye.
Supervisor Elias.
Aye.
Supervisor Miller.
No.
Supervisor Valadez.
Aye.
Chair Bronson.
Aye. By your vote of 4-1, motion carries.